So in this video, I'm going to talk about a lot of things regarding the current situation in Iran. And we're going to read from the current news, then talk about the Israeli threat to Iran, the military capabilities of Iran, the Iranian enrichment history, recent anyway, and what does this mean for the Israeli foreign policy in the long run that has links to Theodore Herzl and the Greater Israel Project. And no, this ain't a crazy conspiracy because everything I'm going to be using is from firsthand sources. So Trump threatens Iran's supreme leader, escalating his rhetoric about the conflict. President Trump escalated his rhetoric against Iran on Tuesday, issuing a threat on social media against its supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and taking credit for having complete and total control of the skies over Iran, which is that's not true. It's a pipe dream. Iran has a very capable ballistic missile program that dates back over 30 years. I'm going to talk about that because we have seen some uh, decent strikes in Israel. Nothing serious so far, but there's enough there that could escalate even further into an all out war, which it hasn't been yet. The Libertarian Institute has been on point so far regarding the latest news of what's going on. So, to get the better expert opinion, I would suggest following them on Twitter and going to their website. Um, Here's what Trump said. Look at it. This is from a first world leader talking about the death of another world leader like it's nothing. Look what he says here. We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He's an easy target, but his safety. We're not going to take him out, at least not for now. It's like a game of hide and seek. One in a series of statements he made before meeting with his national security team in the White House room about the conflict, which I'm pretty sure is divided. There are many people in the Department of Defense that are against this because of the strategic disadvantage for the American military. Now, in terms of the technological advancements of Iran, they're on point and they could pose a direct threat, not just to anybody in the Middle East. I'm talking about the Gulf too, but all the way to North Africa. So anybody within the Mediterranean, anybody within the Straits of Hormuz or the Persian Gulf are all within striking distance of Iran's military capabilities. This is a rhetorical step further that Trump had gone on Monday. He had been asked about whether he wanted to see regime change in Iran and replied, I want to see no nuclear weapons in Iran, and we're well on our way to making sure that happens. But that doesn't matter because I'm going to read to you from the International Atomic Agency that there are no nuclear capabilities in Iran, right? So this is an article from Political Magazine, and I'm going to put this in the description. What's Israel's endgame? I'm going to move all the way down to here, right? I'm going to read this to you. As the hours wore on Friday, and after this column was first published, Netanyahu weighed in with similar exhortations to Iranians, telling them that the Islamist regime has never been weaker, and that Israel is clearing the path for you to achieve your freedom. That's the same thing that they were talking about with Iraq in 2003. That as soon as Saddam Hussein falls, Iraq would be free. What would happen? Well, a civil war would happen. The outbreak of a new international terrorist threat happened with the Sunni and Shia sectarian violence that happened there. Thank you, Morsi, a U.S. puppet plant and Sunni extremist, basically a Shia extremist, have persecuted the Sunnis, in which coalesce with the new group, the Wal Tawhid Wal Jihad, under Abu Musab al Zarqawi. That later became Al Qaeda in Iraq, which later became the Islamic State in Iraq, and then later the Islamic State and the Levant. Time has come for the Iranian people to unite around its flag and historic legacy by standing up for what your freedom of an evil and oppressive regime. Now, this is a very interesting tactic by U.S. and Israeli authorities to get the Iranian people divided enough. Now, the sanctions, international and domestic sanctions, didn't work. It did work with Iraq. It weakened them. and the U.S. military just ran right through them in the first Iraq war in 1990. But in the second one, took a little bit, but still they were defeated. Their top Baptist leadership was killed. Saddam Hussein was captured and hanged. And through the Iraqi Provisional Authority, number one and number two, the liquidation of the military and police force, which they didn't do in 1990. Now, time has come for the Iranian people to unite around its flag, and there are many unknowns. Can Israel really carry out an operation that spurs regime change on its own? No. Military analysts generally agree that Israel will need the United States' help to take out all of Iran's nuclear infrastructure, much of which is buried deep underground. But if Israel pursues more assassinations, including of Iranian political leaders, a regime collapses is now the question. But they're very thorough and resilient, the Persians. And they're very patient. Now, in terms of regime change, that isn't happening. Because as long as Israel is doing the attacking, the Iranians, who have been persecuted by Israel for decades, are going to remain steadfast, even at the behest of the mullahs. The enemy of my enemy is my friend for a reason. And together they will persevere and fight against Israel. Now, Israel knows they don't stand a chance against Iran. So the United States has to get involved. Right now, there's an argument in the White House Situation Room, the Department of Defense, the intelligence services, damn well know CIA. They're talking with foreign policy analysts and about what's the long-term goals and consequences if we engage. And, I have interviewed former Colin Powell, Secretary of State Colin Powell's assistant, Lawrence Wilkerson, on the show some years back. We talked about the Iran war, and he said that it wouldn't be feasible. It wasn't then, and it's not now. There are many people in the Trump administration are basically saying, so this is the reason why I made, some of the more, the new playlist I made, where I think that it's going to take a false flag terrorist event to be blamed on Iran in order for the United States to get involved. That's what happened with Iraq in 2003, although they had nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks. It was still blamed on them. So when you talk about Israel's threats to Iran, it goes back many, many years. In November of 2003, there was a Scottish newspaper that claimed that Israel warned that it would prepare to take unilateral military action against Iran if the international community failed to stop any development of its nuclear enrichment programs, and that they would strike against the country's atomic energy facilities, even though that this would be a direct threat to the people, the civilians, that's who would suffer under a military strike, which would be a war crime. It's cited then that Israeli Defense Minister Shaul Motz back then stated that under no circumstances, I'm quoting him, under no circumstances would Israel be able to tolerate nuclear weapons in Iranian possession, end quote. Even in 2006, The Guardian once claimed that the Israeli military had been ordered by then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon to plan for possible strikes on uranium enrichment sites in Iran in March of 2006. And this was all based on Israeli intelligence. So you can see I'm using this to show you that there's a consistent theme in that Iran is trying to procure nuclear weapons. And that the threats go back, as far back as, 30 years. Look, here's an article. It's an outdated article. I got it from the Wayback Machine. Israel readies forces to strike on nuclear Iran in 2005. Iran didn't have nukes. This is 20 years prior to the date right now. Israel's armed forces have been ordered to be ready for possible strikes on secret uranium enrichment sites in Iran. Military sources have revealed. We investigated ourselves. We did nothing wrong. That famous meme? The Israeli military and their intelligence program, they're all acting in accordance. You're really going to trust that? Why not have the International Atomic Agency? Because they found nothing. And for years, the Israelis were saying, oh, the IAEA, they're compromised. And look, Iran's standoff with the International Atomic Agency over nuclear inspections and aggressive rhetoric from Iran are causing mounting concern. The crisis is set to come to head in early March, where Mohammed Ibarad, the head of the EIA, will present his next report on Iran. A senior White House source said the threat of nuclear Iran is moving to the top of the international agenda. What's new? And the reason why the United States did not get involved, because they weren't procuring any weapons. Now, fast forward 20 years later. Here's an article from the statement of the International Atomic Agency, June 13, 2025, just 4 days ago. Early this morning, the International Atomic Agency was informed of the military operation launched by Israel, which includes attacks on nuclear facilities in Iran. We are currently in contact with the Iranian nuclear safety authorities to ascertain the status of relevant nuclear facilities and to assess any wider impacts on nuclear safety and security. Nuclear facilities doesn't mean they're building a nuclear bomb. Uranium enrichment plants. That's what they're talking about. At present, the competent Iranian authorities have confirmed that the Natanz enrichment site, the biggest site, has been impacted and that there are no elevated radiation levels. They have also reported that at present, the Eshevon and Ford Low sites have not been impacted. This development is deeply concerning. I have repeatedly stated that nuclear facilities must never be attacked, regardless of the context or circumstances, as it could harm both people and the environment, which is a war crime. See my videos about the preambles, which I outlined regarding the 4 preambles of the International Criminal Courts. Such attacks have serious implications for nuclear safety, security, and safeguards, as well as regional and international peace and security. Damn straight. Now, when it comes to the defense of Iran, what do they have? Well, according to their to the public record, the Iranian armed forces, which are the largest in the Middle East in terms of active troops anyway, that their military force is made up of approximately 600,000 active duty personnel. You have over 350,000 reserve and about 100,000 of mobilized units, police, intelligence units. So all in all, about 1 million people. These numbers do not include small militias. Most of the weapons that Iran has consist of American systems purchased before the Iranian Revolution in 1979. And of course, limited purchases from Russia in the 1990s following the Iran-Iraq War, which, by the way, the United States was providing Iraq with chemical weapons, which would later turn out to be the chemical weapons that the United States claimed that Iraq was purchasing or procuring with al-Qaeda after 9/11. However, the country has since launched a very, very domestic rearmament program, and its inventory has become quite indigenous. According to Iranian officials, and I'm reading to you from the article from Yahoo in 2001, that the most of the country's military hardware is domestically manufactured, and the country had already become an exporter of arms in the 2000s. Now, when it comes to their most proficient military defense, it's their ballistic missile program. It's also their most proficient offense. The space program as well. It's an internationally very, how can I say, it's a very hot topic, which has consistently refused to negotiate its denouncement for, because this basically is their best chance at fighting against the United States or Israel had this war escalates to it. Now they have a drone program also, which has raised concerns over the Middle East for the right reasons, because I'm going to show you the strength of this ballistic and drone program that they have. Now, this also came to a cause of concern for the United States Central Commander, Ken McKenzie or Kenzie or something like that, where he actually once claimed that the U.S. for the first time since the Korean War were operating without complete air superiority over another country, because Iran's drones and their ballistic missile program is that proficient. And let me show you how proficient they are. This is from Al Jazeera. It's a map, right? So as you can see, all right, here's Iran. Okay. Then they go by kilometers instead of miles. Now, 2,000 kilometers is 1,200 miles. Okay. As you can see here, through the SOMAR and SAIJ, this is their best military ballistic missile program, which is the Kormanshah, the Gadhir, the Kadir, the Sejai, and the Sumar. The Sumar is their best. And that can reach all the way down to, as you could see, North Africa. God's sakes, right? India, even, most of India. And of course, all of the Middle East, including the fucking Gulf. India, Pakistan, I mean, Azerbaijan, Waziristan, even southern fucking Russia. So yeah, like I said, look, folks, I don't deal with extremism or fanaticism. I don't need to. I just need to show you, the news as is, and you make up your own minds. And I hope that you're using your cognitive facilities not to be persuaded by ideology. This is the reason why I sound like a broken record at this point. But you got to be unprejudiced by the world in order to make a clear distinction of what's going on here, and then we can act on it. But just keep, and there's multiple, and I'm gonna make myself disappear here. I mean, look at these weapons that they have. There's so many, and they can reach short range, 500 kilometers, 30, 40 miles, up to 1,200 miles, even exceeding 1,700 miles. The Sumar. Okay, so as you can see, I mean, it is just phenomenal, and this is a great defense. I mean, this is the reason why Israel considered Iran as the ultimate enemy, the ultimate threat. Oh, it's not Saudi Arabia, it's not Bahrain, it's not Qatar, it's not United Arab Emirates, where all these jihadist groups come from, Algeria, it's not these groups that had the money to pay these fucking foolish jihadist groups, and the one country that's fucking trying to fight them in Syria. And this is the reason why we killed Qasem Soleimani, not because he tried to kill Trump. I mean, fucking grow up. Imagine trying to kill a U.S. president. It would cause war, and they didn't want to cause a war. Stop listening to U.S. media and legacy media from Israel and the United States. And I'm not telling you to believe press TV all the time, but you have to go outside the country, United States, to get, somewhere, the small morsels of truth. To find out what's going on the inside, we have to go on the outside. Because if all you're looking is rose-colored glasses on the inside, you're not going to see much. So you can see it. It's a very remarkable program. I mean, the damage has been minimal. Okay. Couple of facilities have been hit. And if we go by, the latest news, the intelligence buildings targeting in Iran, and you have one of their generals that were assassinated. But, Iranian strikes have hit Tel Aviv. More civilians have been killed in Iran than in Israel. And the precision strikes belong to Iran so far. That's going by Israeli media. Read Haaretz, read Times of Israel. You don't have to believe me. But this is, I mean, it's not a secret of what's going on here. Why are they attacking Israel, Iran in the first place? Because when you had that type of military, this is the reason why imagine they had a nuclear weapon. We wouldn't be at this point. There wouldn't be no strikes. And the only reason why we strike these countries is because they really can't defend themselves. And this is the reason why the Department of Defense, the CIA were dead set against, the National Intelligence Council. I mean, the Pentagon, they were all like dead set against this war because they knew it wouldn't be like Iraq. It would take years to defeat this country. And so, look, I'll just show you that here you have Iranian military targeting Israeli air bases from which attacks on Iran were launched. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps targeted a number of Israeli air bases from which on Iran were launched, according to state-run media. These strikes on Israeli bases were carried out in response to the Israeli regime's brazen attacks against the sacred soil of Islam. I mean, Sorry, I got cut off there. But the strikes in Iran have been very complete, proficient so far. Now, what does this mean for the long run? What does this mean for Israel? I mean, for the country itself. I mean, basically, is Israel basically led by psychopaths where they don't care about the consequences, that they don't care about how many people it takes to kill? Well, this is a short clip. Okay, this is from Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister of Israel. Listen to what he has to say here at Jerusalem Day speech. I think it was last year. Yeah, it was May of this year. What is he talking about there? I mean, it's really on point. He's talking about border expansion. And what does he mean by that? Well, we're talking about the Greater Israel Project. Need you a reminder? Hey, look, I'll show you a picture, right? All right, this is a picture of the Israel Project, where you can see this Israel wishes to dominate the dark blue areas: Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, right? Parts of northern Southern Arabia, parts of Egypt, northern Egypt. And they would control, by default, the Mediterranean, the Euphrates, and parts of the Persian Gulf. Iraq, leading Iran to be totally cut off because Turkey ain't helping them. And this is the Caspian Sea. So, as you can see, Iran would be totally surrounded. And the long term plans come from all the way back to Theodore Herzl. Now, I mean, Smotrich's claims simply mirror what the regime is already implementing on the ground. I mean, look what's going on in Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria. And that's what the Odin Yunan plan talked about. That's what the Greater Israel Project talked about. That's what Paul Wolfowitz was talking about. The Promised Land, Richard Pearl, Douglas Feit. They're all basing this. These are all U.S. politicians that have loyalty to Israel. These are all politicians that talked about the long-term goal for Israel to control the Middle East. And the Promised Land that I showed you extends from the River of Egypt up to the Euphrates, including parts of Syria, Lebanon, and of course the Euphrates and Persian Gulf. And it comes from the Odin plan, which I did videos on this, which is also called the Strategy for Israel in the 1980s. And it called for the breakup of Iraq, weakening of Lebanon, the disintegration of the government under Assad in Syria, and a talk about regional internal instability for Egypt. And it talks about another plan called the Alon plan. Nobody really talks about this, but there was a drive in 1967. There was a military leader named Yigal Allon in 1967. He talked about the Alon plan, which was basically 4 key points. Now I'm reading from the document. The security buffer zone, a central aspect of the plan was to retain strategic parts of the West Bank and the Jordan Valley. The return of densely populated Arab areas, which proposed returning parts of the occupied West Bank to Jordan, the Gaza Strip, which advocated for the annexation of the Strip, the entire Strip, and the Golan Heights and the Sinai Peninsula, which called for the plan for the retention of the occupied Golan Heights, while the Sinai Peninsula, captured from Egypt, was seen more of a potential bargaining chip for future peace negotiations with Egypt. But with the Greater Israel Project, that would be under their position. Now, the Israeli expansionist mindset come from groups like the ultimate Yahud, the religious Zionist party, for which the recently laid bare by Smotrich, as I showed you there. And he talks about Israeli Jewish supremacism. So this war is not just as simple as good and evil as the media wants you to believe. There's a lot of different reasons behind this, but the main reason is that Jewish supremacism, which is basically a large part of Netanyahu's government, and Isaac Herzog, the president, basically, who is seemingly less powerful than Netanyahu. I don't know how that is, but the Likud and the Religious Zionist Party and the Ultimate Yehud Party, they have a large contingent and they're gaining favor because the rise of this ultra orthodox nationalist ideology that's not just permeated in Israel, but in most of the Gulf, Europe, and the United States, as well as South America. And it's precipitated from the fanatics and the idiocracy and the dumbfoolery of the left and their extremist views. They both feed off each other, which means that there is no, like I said, there is no left and right. It's human ignorance. That's all this is. And their apathy and their psychopathy. All right, listen, I'll end it right there. But if I'm going to keep tabs on this. And if there's any real important updates, you'll be the first to hear it. And I'll report to you without bias and prejudice. And thank you very much for tuning in, guys. And see you in the next video.